One passenger died after a Singapore Airlines flight hit severe turbulence today. We have the latest on that and more coming up on Business Matters. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining me here today. I'm David Lam, standing in for Don. U.S. stocks closed with slight gains today. Investors still looking for clues on the timing of a rate cut. NVIDIA, Wall Street's third largest firm by market cap, will report results after the closing bell tomorrow. It will test whether the rally in AI-related stocks can be sustained. Investors also looking toward minutes from the Fed's most recent policy meeting, also due out tomorrow. Markets are predicting a 65% chance for a cut of at least 25 basis points in September, according to CME's FedWatch tool. One person is dead and 30 more are injured after a flight from London to Singapore hit turbulence today. The flight had to make an emergency landing in Bangkok, Thailand. The plane dropped 6,000 feet in just 3 minutes. Violent turbulence tossed around passengers and other objects inside the plane. Eyewitness footage showed damaged overhead cabins and injured passengers being carried out by stretchers after the flight landed. Here's more on the story.
This was not the landing passengers aboard a Singapore Airlines flight from London overnight were expecting. Ambulances, triage tents, and a swarm of medical personnel tending to dozens of injuries suffered by those on board when violent turbulence rocked the Boeing jet mid-flight.
This tragic incident will be investigated to see whether the pilots had gotten a warning that they were coming into a dangerous area.
At least one fatality was reported after the diverted plane, originally bound for Singapore, landed safely in Bangkok, Thailand early Tuesday morning. The airline confirmed the death in a social media post, adding that there were 211 passengers and 18 crew members on flight SQ321. Most of the injured passengers suffered cuts and bruises, said an airport official in Bangkok, who added that many on the jet were wearing seatbelts at the time of the turbulence. Singapore's Ministry of Transportation confirmed it has opened an investigation into the incident, and in the same statement said they will deploy their own safety experts to Thailand.
Thai authorities say almost 200 passengers are awaiting other flights to their destinations, while some of the injured remain at local hospitals. Hollywood star Scarlett Johansson is not happy with artificial intelligence giant OpenAI. She has accused the company of creating a voice for its ChatGPT system that sounded, quote, eerily similar to hers. Her comments came just hours after the firm said it was taking down the voice called Sky. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said in a statement that Sky's voice was not an imitation of Johansson, but from a different professional actress. But out of respect for Johansson, OpenAI had paused using Sky's voice in their product. However, Johansson said Altman had approached her last September, and she said he'd offered an offer to hire her to create a ChatGPT voice, and that she turned it down. The fight over rights to actors' voices and images has become a focus in Hollywood. That, as studios have considered how to use AI to create new entertainment. Macy's stock rose 5% today on upbeat earnings. They were pleased to report that they are ahead of plan across all three growth pillars. NTD's Sean Marshall has more information.
Macy's raised its profit forecast for the year on Tuesday as its new CEO's turnaround plan helped to shield the department store chain from falling sales due to a cautious consumer.
Our customers across all three nameplates continue to benefit from strong wage and job growth. However, inflationary pressures persist, and they're feeling that pinch. The outlook provided on our fourth quarter earnings call, as well as today's update, assumes our customers will continue to carefully scrutinize their discretionary purchases.
In the call, Macy's CEO Tony Spring mentioned their 3-year investment plan to return to profitable growth, which is to strengthen the 3 Macy's brands, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and Bluemercury. Macy's plans to save $100 million in costs this year by shuttering about 150 stores through 2026. Looking ahead, the company continues to closely monitor supply chain issues as far as Red Sea disruptions and potential China tariff regulations. At this time, material impacts from supply chain disruptions are not anticipated. The company is opening 15 Bloomingdale's locations and at least 30 new Blue Mercury cosmetic stores. Both chains have outperformed many of its Macy's department store locations. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
Are app-based drivers independent contractors or employees? That's what the California Supreme Court will consider. Voters passed Prop 22 4 years ago, which classifies delivery drivers for companies like Uber and Lyft as independent contractors and not employees. Now, a labor union and 4 drivers say that ballot measure was unconstitutional. Unlike independent contractors, employees are entitled to minimum wage, overtime, reimbursement, and other protections. Uber, Lyft, and other app-based services have said that without Prop 22, the increased costs could force them to stop doing business in California. Trucking companies are reporting more and more theft. Some are happening in new and unusual ways. I talked to co-owner of J.K.C. Trucking, Inc., Mike Kucharski, earlier, and he says the thieves are part of organized crime rings and stolen goods are quickly being liquidated. Mike, great to have you with us. Now, you co-own the J.K.C. Trucking Company. Tell us more about this trucking theft situation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show again. Yes, so we own J.K.C. Trucking, and where we specialize, we haul food. It's frozen, refrigerated, and what's happening is we're seeing a lot of theft happening, especially in California and Illinois, or we're based out of Illinois, but we have a couple terminals in California. We're seeing it all over the board. We're seeing, we do some rail business. We're seeing it at the rail. The rail heads and the trailers are waiting for it to get it unloaded off the ramps. People are breaking into the equipment, stealing product. We've seen it here in our corporate yard in Illinois. We had a truck last year pull in on a Sunday afternoon, hooked to one of our trailers, was trying to leave. Good thing one of our drivers blocked him. We got him unblocked, and they didn't steal a whole truckload of a very expensive cheese going for a very big client of ours.
So are they doing this during the process of delivery? And what other products are being targeted? I know you mentioned cheese.
Yeah, so great question. So last week I came from a food distributors conference, and we were talking about, and there's multiple food distributors in this meeting, and all of them are seeing theft. I mean, they're seeing truckloads of pork being stolen, which is expensive because that's over $100,000 for a truckload. But they're saying they're also stealing other goods that are not expensive like they used to. Everybody used to always be watching the high items, but now they're stealing truckloads of cereal, truckloads of pallets. They don't care no more. They're stealing all kinds of goods just to get rid of them.
So what's the impact on consumers?
Yeah, so this is hitting, I mean, how's this? Everything gets trickled down to the end user, UI, the American people, the consumer. So what's happening is that it's getting harder and harder to get cargo insurance for truckers. There's more restrictions, there's more clauses, and it's more expensive because of all this theft. I mean, as J.K.C., we do our best to make sure that we don't get products stolen. We teach our drivers, but now it's just happening all over the place. And then I feel like there's less circumstances, the police are less involved because they are helping, but there's so much theft all over the place.
And Mike, so what can be done about this to reduce theft?
No, that's a great question. I mean, we've taken several steps. Number one, we've done education to our drivers for saying that, look, when you have a load, you have to have a padlock, you have to have a seal, which is like this device that you put on the trailer and you break it at each stop. It's a one-time use thing. We've told them that they can't go home until they're unloaded. At the rails, we're putting on a heavier type of a seal, kind of a bolt seal, that when we seal the trailer, you literally have to have bolt cutters or such device to cut this off to get into the trailer to make it much harder. But it's not only happening to us, it's happening to everybody around us that's on the train also.
What are people doing with the cereal that they're stealing? Are they selling them to grocery stores or like on an individual level?
That's a great question. That's $1 million question. I don't know, but how's this? These guys that are stealing this product are organized. These are organized crime. This is not just like some, guy that just stole a truck off the street, because they're liquidating this product. They're stealing these truckloads, and they're being, we never see the product ever again. You used to be able to recover some product, but this stuff, as soon as it's gone, it's being consumed, and it's gone.
And lastly, what is the trucking industry as a whole doing to mitigate trucking theft?
This is a great question, because this is all new to us. This just kind of started happening in the last, ramping up since kind of COVID. We're getting together and we're trying to make up a plan, come up with the suggestions of, how we could slow this down, what could we do, what are the next steps to go out there, because we're reaching out to law enforcement, but law enforcement is dealing with all these issues, because it's not only us, it feels like everybody is being hit. It used to be, high electronics, but now it's just being food and just everyday items. It's hitting all of us in the pocket, and we need to get a handle on the situation, because it can't continue this way. We're trying to feed the American people, and these goods are being stolen right underneath our noses.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on the show.
A conservative shareholder has pulled a resolution demanding JPMorgan explain its policies. David Banson is the head of a family trust. His proposal was going to be included at the upcoming JPMorgan annual meeting. It called on the bank to report how its policies based on religion or political views would impact employees. A representative for Banson said the bank has taken steps to show it's pulling back from political tests for customers. One policy at issue was the bank requiring merchants using WePay to deny payments tied to so-called social risk issues. That would include allegations of racism or sexual harassment. That policy has been dropped. To help us understand what's at stake here, I talked to Jeremy Tedesco. He is senior counsel at Alliance Defending Freedom, a public interest law firm. Jeremy, welcome. Now, a consultant for the conservative shareholder for JPMorgan, David Banson, said they pulled back a resolution against JPMorgan Chase. What's the significance here?
Well, the significance is Chase's actions. The shareholder filed a shareholder resolution asking Chase to do a study of the impact of DEI programs on their workforce, especially as it relates to the religious and political views of their employees. And this was part of a broader strategy of shareholders and others in the conservative movement to try to hold these big banks, JPMorgan Chase included, responsible for continuing to seemingly politicize their services, politicize their workforces. And what we saw from JPMorgan Chase this year was positive steps in the right direction. They dropped a social risk policy in their WePay side of their business, that's their payment processing side of their business. That was a policy that allowed them to deny services if people engaged in what they called hate or intolerance. And so those kind of policies pose a serious risk to people having their accounts canceled because of their religious or political views or expression.
Jeremy, what was the driver on making them, change their view-based policies?
Well, one of them is our Viewpoint Diversity Score Business Index, which is a measurement of corporate respect for free speech and religious freedom that we put out every year. It's an annual index. And one of the key things we're asking for as part of the scoring we do of these major financial institutions is that they drop policies like the one that Chase dropped that pose a serious risk of viewpoint-based banking decisions. Chase had actually used this policy in the past to debank people for political reasons. And so the fact that they dropped it is actually a really big step. We hope other banks follow their lead and do the same thing and get rid of these kind of policies from their terms of service. And so what we're seeing here this year from JPMorgan Chase for the first time after about 2+ years of pretty steady engagement is them moving in the right direction. They should be commended for that. But we also know there's a long way to go for them to ultimately satisfy people's concerns over these issues.
Are we seeing other banks following the same suit so far as JPMorgan?
JPMorgan is really the first bank to change a policy and eliminate one that we identify in our index as posing a real serious risk for viewpoint-based debanking. But we see other banks scoring better on the index than JPMorgan Chase because they already don't have those kind of policies. And so, it's kind of the banks are kind of on a spectrum on their respect for free speech and religious freedom. Candidly, JPMorgan Chase is one of the lowest scorers on our index, but they are moving in the right direction. And it's really important that big banks like JPMorgan Chase and Bank of America make these kinds of changes. They have just unbelievable power over the financial markets. The top 5 banks own 50% of the deposit market in the country.
How much of the population would you say understands these social risk issues or policies, because they're essentially depositing their paychecks into the banks?
Yeah, there's a huge education gap here. I think we're making a lot of strides. But look, when you sign up for a bank account or online services through a financial institution, you probably, like me, don't read carefully to see if these kind of policies in place. But the reality is, policies like this, these vague policies, social risk policies, reputation risk policies, these kind of vague standards that allow banking officials to debank people for religious or political reasons, or allow external activists or even government actors to co-opt those policies to shut down speech they don't like. These are real risks.
Jeremy, thank you so much for your insight and coming on our show with the latest release of the Viewpoint Diversity Index with your organization.
Yeah, thank you. Go to viewpointdiversityscore.org to see the results for all 85 companies we scored today.
All right, we appreciate it. Coming up in tech news, the world's most advanced chip-making machines reportedly have remote kill switches that could prove useful if the Chinese regime were to invade Taiwan, since the United States doesn't want those high-tech to fall into China's hands. America's energy needs expected to skyrocket. Massive improvements may be needed just to keep the lights on. More. Welcome back. Now, former President Trump topped President Biden for the first time in monthly fundraising. He reportedly took in over $75 million in April. The haul was boosted by a record-setting $50.5 million raised during an event with donors in Palm Beach, Florida. President Biden's campaign raised a bit over $50 million in April. Still, Biden's campaign continues to have a considerably larger war chest. Lowe's managed to beat earnings and revenue expectations, despite the home improvement sector seeing cracks. The retailer reported that sales fell year over year as do-it-yourself customers bought fewer pricey items as expected, but gains from professionals and online sales helped to offset that drop. And Nestle is cooking up something for weight-conscious customers. The world's largest food company will market a new $5 line of frozen pizzas and protein-enriched pastas in the US. They say these products are designed for people on weight loss drugs like Wegovy or Ozempic. The world's most sophisticated chip-making machines essentially have kill switches. In an exclusive report by Bloomberg, sources said ASML and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company could disable their chip-making machines remotely if China were to invade Taiwan. Dutch company ASML is the world's largest supplier of semiconductor manufacturing machines. The US is concerned its advanced technology might fall into the wrong hands like China. TSMC is the world's largest semiconductor foundry and uses ASML chips making machines. Sources told Bloomberg that if there's an invasion from China on Taiwan, ASML can remotely shut off its line of extreme ultraviolet or EUV machines. And the EUV machine prints microchip transistors for artificial intelligence use and sensitive military applications. The remote kill switch function could render the machines useless to China, which is trying to advance its own chip-making technology. The Environmental Protection Agency is warning of a cybersecurity threat to public water systems. The agency says 70% of the water utilities it inspected don't meet the standards from the Safe Drinking Water Act to prevent attacks. Some of the issues include outdated passwords and easily compromised login information. EPA and national security officials say letters have been sent to governors across the U.S. about the threats and importance of taking action to repair the issues and create stronger cybersecurity protections. Officials say China, Russia, and Iran have already disrupted water systems with cyber attacks. Energy demand is expected to skyrocket as technology use spreads. Energy leaders say massive changes are needed just to keep the lights on. Here's NTD's Virginia Gibson with more.
We cannot be open for business if we cannot keep the lights on.
Energy demand is projected to grow drastically. At a Senate hearing on Tuesday, lawmakers said this may be one of America's greatest challenges.
Just a few years ago, a large-scale industrial manufacturing facility might require 100 megawatts, or about enough to power 100,000 homes. A facility that size would typically be one of a kind in a region, would be a major source of economic activity for that area. Now it is common for a single data center to require 3 up to 15 times this amount of power.
American Electric Power Company President Benjamin Folk said customers are requesting amounts of energy that are double that of current peak demand. He said America needs massive change to reliably serve a fraction of future needs.
ChatGPT requires 2.9 watt-hours for a request. Now, that's nearly 10 times more power than a typical Google search.
He said artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and Bitcoin mining are largely driving the energy demand, a demand that involves reliability.
If you take power away for milliseconds, you cause astonishing economic destruction. You don't get to ask them, would you please turn it off right now? The wind isn't blowing, and our batteries have run out.
Energy expert Mark Mills said America should have diverse sources of energy. Throwing out fossil fuels and replacing them with renewables may not work. One reason: batteries aren't reliable.
They're extraordinarily expensive ways to store energy. On an engineering physics basis, roughly 100 times more expensive than the traditional ways to store energy. Tanks, caverns, piles of coal.
Mills said tens of trillions of dollars worth of batteries would be needed for a full-scale renewable energy America, an amount the world isn't capable of producing.
We encourage investigation in all sources of new generation, like new hydro, new nuclear, small modular reactors, geothermal, battery technology for wind and solar to make them more reliable.
Tech executive Scott Gatzmeier encouraged developing all sources of energy and requiring sufficient new generation before retiring existing generation. Virginia Gibson, NTD News.
All right, let's switch bases to sports. Basketball star Caitlin Clark has signed a multi-year sponsorship deal with Wilson, which is the maker of the WNBA's official basketball. And to put this into perspective, the only other athlete to be a brand ambassador for Wilson was Michael Jordan in the 1980s. The signature ball will be gold and white with personalized engravings of the Indiana Fever star. The initial rollout will highlight some of Clark's historic accomplishments, including breaking the all-time NCAA scoring record. All right, that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have any feedback for the episode, feel free to let me know. You can email us at business@ntd.com or leave a comment online. We read them all. And don't forget, business matters. Goodbye.